In the Forbidden City, all females were meticulously secluded within the imperial quarters deep within the palace. They were confined to the inner court, with strict prohibitions against venturing into the northern section. While the majority of women within the Forbidden City served as maids and attendants, a select few were designated as concubines, tasked with the duty of bearing as many children as the emperor desired. The enigmatic realm of ancient China has long captivated the curiosity of historians and adventurers alike. Welcome to our channel. Today, we venture through the chilling history of Chinese concubinage, revealing the shocking norms of the past. If you are ready to uncover the eerie secrets of history, hit that subscribe button and let's get started. While harem culture existed in various parts of the East and beyond, Chinese harem were notable for their unique customs and practices. Although some of these traditions and ways of life may appear peculiar and even disturbing, they were considered commonplace by the Chinese concubines of that era. Today, on flip side of history, we delve into the world of untamed Chinese concubines and the norms that prevailed during the time. First and foremost, within the harem, a striking characteristic was the unwavering adherence to the laws and hierarchical traditions. Transgressions were met with severe consequences, including the possibility of death. Each concubine in the Chinese harem had a clear understanding of her designated place in the hierarchy. While an emperor could have up to 4 official wives, the highest position was held by the Empress, who possessed the most formidable influence. However, the number of concubines could reach a staggering figure: hundreds, possibly even thousands. Following the Empress in the hierarchy were the supplementary wives, restricted to a maximum of 4, each bearing her own title: Guifei, meaning precious; Shuifei, meaning virtuous; Difei, meaning moral; and Shanfei, meaning talented. Subsequent to these primary female favorites were the 9 senior concubines, trailed by 27 junior concubines known as Shifu. The junior concubines were further categorized, each corresponding to a distinct rank on the hierarchy chart. At the pinnacle were the 9 maidens, followed by the 9 beauties and the 9 talents. Below them in the concubine hierarchy were the 81, and a single one more, categorized into 3 grades: precious timbers, imperial women, and female collectors. While some emperors may have made slight modifications to this arrangement, the fundamental structure remained largely intact. In Chinese culture, there exists a saying, "daughter of the 15th concubine," which suggests a distant hypothetical relationship. This saying originates from the traditions of the Chinese harem, where a concubine's serial number or rank determined her status, with higher numbers indicating lower status. It is worth noting that, based on their status, each concubine was entitled to an entourage of servants ranging from 1 to 12, as well as a eunuch. Consequently, the emperor's harem community could comprise as many as 40,000 individuals. Access to the emperor's presence and the privilege of spending the night with the revered ruler necessitated a meticulous ritual. Interestingly, the first wife and those ranked just below her were permitted to share the emperor's bed only once a month. It was believed that women possessing the most potent yin energy should not disturb the emperor more frequently, as doing so could adversely affect not only the emperor's health but also the entire kingdom. As a result, on other nights, the emperor had the liberty to choose from among his concubines, leading to a complex and ever-changing dynamic within the harem. The process of selecting a concubine was, to say the least, rather intriguing. Firstly, the emperor maintained an album containing portraits of all potential concubines, which he would periodically browse. Each concubine was identified by a nameplate featuring a number and her name. As the emperor flipped through the pages of the album, he would choose the ones that caught his fancy for the day. Those chosen names were placed into a jade jug, and then a customary lottery would commence. When fortune smiles upon a woman selected by a random chance, the emperor would then strike a gong, summoning the eunuchs. The eunuchs were then responsible for overseeing the subsequent preparations. They would attend to the woman, arranging her hair and conducting any necessary procedures. Prior to entering the chamber, they would disrobe her entirely to ensure she carried no weapons that could pose any threat to the emperor. It is also worth noting that the method of selecting concubines could vary. Emperor Wujin, for instance, renowned for his distinctive approach of selecting a concubine, prohibited any marriage in his realm until he had chosen one. He devised an unconventional method for determining his nocturnal companion. All eligible women would line up along the palace walls as he leisurely traversed the road in a cart drawn by goats. The goats roamed freely without any direction. When one of the animals halted, the woman who had caused the cart to stop became the emperor's chosen companion for the night. It's important to emphasize that remaining a virgin was considered a grave transgression in this context, so it's unsurprising that every woman sought to enter the imperial chambers at least once. Consequently, the stakes for gaining entry were exceedingly high, to the point where concubines would go great lengths to portray their rivals as undesirable to the emperor, preventing their names from entering the selection bowl. Intimacy with the emperor, a situation that now elicits sympathy for both the emperor and the concubine, did not occur in complete privacy. Firstly, either the mother, senior figures, or trusted maids, and sometimes even senior wives, had to be present during the process. Their presence was primarily to offer guidance should it be needed. Additionally, a eunuch carefully documented all proceedings on papyrus using red ink, which later contributed to the association of the color red with intimacy. However, that's not the entirety of the story. There were eunuchs stationed outside the door who tracked the duration of the emperor's time spent in bed. When the allotted time was up, they would inform the emperor that it was time to conclude the encounter, occasionally signaling with a gong. In essence, if the emperor ran out of time, there was no leniency. Tradition had to be held. Finally, after the intimate encounter, the emperor was obligated to inform the eunuch whether the intimacy had occurred or not, and this information was duly recorded in a special logbook. Moreover, the emperor had to specify whether a seat was to be reserved for the concubine during future encounters. In cases where the emperor's response was negative, the concubine was subjected to a procedure in which pressure was applied to her abdomen to facilitate the expulsion of semen, and this event was duly recorded. Consequently, if a woman unexpectedly became pregnant, she faced the grim accusation of treason, resulting in severe punishments even though her role was often negligible. Remarkably, even the principal wife of the emperor was not exempt from this documentation procedure. This practice was implemented to eliminate any potential for treason, which was not uncommon, and also to ensure that the emperor did not unwittingly father a child who was not his own. With fierce competition among concubines, it's important to note that many remained unfulfilled. To cope with this, Chinese harems relied on various toys and inventions for self-satisfaction. The bonds of affection between women within the harem were also acknowledged and even encouraged by the Chinese society. However, there were other traditions that could elicit genuine sorrow and disgust. Frequently, after the emperor's passing, all concubines were interred alive with him to ensure that he would not be lonely even in the afterlife. Concubines could be subjected to extremely violent punishments, including the death penalty for the slightest transgression. Concubines themselves, entangled in palace intrigues, were not averse to acts of murder and poisoning against their rivals, sometimes resorting to concoctions designed to induce miscarriages in pregnant competitors. Furthermore, many women worn down by prolonged abstinence sought fulfillment elsewhere, leading to a common practice of abortions within Chinese harems. It's noteworthy that despite the privileges and favoritism afforded to concubines, some parents intentionally handicapped their daughters to dissuade the emperor's interest and thus prevent their daughters from entering the harem. Apart from the emperor, the opportunity to maintain harem extended to nearly anyone in Chinese society, depending on their status. Wealthy and noble individuals had the privilege of multiple wives, and those of lower status could establish smaller, more intimate harems, often comprising around 10 women. Even impoverished men, lacking a legitimate heir from their own legal wives, were entitled to bring new wives into their households. However, the lives of such concubines were often marked by extreme hardship. For instance, following childbirth, a concubine was frequently obligated to breastfeed not only her own child but also her husband's parents. These concubines had significantly fewer rights than their counterparts in the imperial harem. Any minor transgression could result in their death at the hands of either their husbands or other family members. While the law ostensibly prohibited such practices, the penalties were typically symbolic, consisting of a modest fine or a few lashes with sticks on the heels. Nevertheless, it was the impoverished young women who endured the harshest circumstances. The birth of a daughter in ancient China posed a significant challenge. Unable to sustain themselves, impoverished families often entrusted their daughters to other families' harems as early as 8 years old. These young girls were compelled to obey the commands of their new husbands and masters. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this dive into history, hit the like button, subscribe for more, and keep exploring the mysteries of the past. Until next time, stay curious.